5 Hard Realities of Life After Age 80. No one really sits you down and tells you what happens after 80. Not the full story. Anyway, you hear about retirement, about grandkids, about taking it easy, and yes, some of that is true. But there's another side, quieter, more personal, that doesn't show up in birthday cards or health brochures. It's the side that sneaks in slowly, reshaping your days and the way you experience the world around you. And unless someone names it out loud, it's easy to think you're the only one feeling it, but you're not. And that's why we're here, to speak honestly, to shine light on the harder truths that come with aging, not because they're tragic, but because understanding them gives us clarity, compassion, and even strength. There's a moment in your early 80s when you begin to notice something subtle. Your world, once full of noise and movement and people coming and going, starts to quiet down. It's not that people disappear overnight, but the rhythm changes. The calls don't come as often. The doorbell rings less. The calendar, once packed with lunches and errands and conversations, begins to leave you with long, open spaces. And at first, it's fine, maybe even welcome. After all, a little peace is good, but then the peace turns into stillness, and the stillness turns into a kind of echo you weren't expecting. You sit in your favorite chair and remember how full the house once felt. Not just with sound, but with energy. There were voices, footsteps, laughter bouncing off the walls. Now, it's your own breathing you hear the most. And while solitude can be beautiful, there's a part of you that misses the noise, not the chaos, but the closeness. It's not loneliness exactly. It's more like noticing how many people have drifted away, not in anger, not even deliberately, just slowly. Life takes them in different directions. Friends move into care homes. Some pass on, and families grow busy with their own lives. You still matter to them. But the days of spontaneous coffee chats or sitting on the porch with an old friend, that chapter seems to have turned itself. And yet, you keep going. You smile when they do call. You light up when someone visits. You hold on to the memories more tightly now, not because you're stuck in the past, but because they remind you that you live fully, loudly, and with love. Then comes the realization that small things take longer. A sniffle that once lasted a day now lingers into a week. A minor trip over the rug leaves a bruise that seems to bloom and stay. The body, once quick to bounce back, now negotiates every recovery. It's not weakness, it's change. The kind of change that requires your patience, your gentleness, and sometimes your surrender. You used to skip meals and never think twice. Now, one missed breakfast throws off your whole balance. You used to walk all morning. Now, you measure your steps, mindful of how your legs might feel later. It's humbling, sometimes even frustrating. You catch yourself getting upset over things that never used to slow you down. A twinge in your hip, a stretch of fatigue that comes out of nowhere. And with it comes a quiet question. Is this just a moment, or is this the new normal? But in this shift, there's something powerful too. You start paying attention. You learn the patterns of your body. You become more in tune, more careful, more aware. You no longer take energy for granted, which makes it even more sacred when it returns. You let go of the pressure to be as strong as before and instead focus on protecting what strength remains. Some days, that means resting more, drinking more water, saying no to plans you would have forced yourself to keep 10 years ago. And that's not giving up. That's wisdom. You stop pushing just to prove something, and you start listening to the parts of you that whisper instead of shout. You notice what helps, what hurts, what matters, and in doing so, you begin to protect your energy like it's something rare and beautiful, because it is. And just when you start to adjust, another strange thing begins to happen. You feel invisible, not in your own mirror, not in your own heart, but in the way others move around you. You step into a room and notice that conversations don't pause the way they used to. You speak, and sometimes people nod without really hearing. You get interrupted more, glanced over more, And you start to wonder, when did my voice become so easy to tune out? It's not malicious. It's not cruel. It's just a shift. The world starts spinning faster, and suddenly it feels like you're no longer in the center of the orbit. You sit at a family gathering, and the stories swirl around you: job updates, vacation plans, new technology. And while you try to follow, there are moments where you realize you become more observer than participant. That kind of invisibility stings in a way that's hard to describe, because inside, you're still you, still full of opinions, still carrying decades of experience, still capable of sharp insight and dry humor. But outside, people sometimes see the age first, the silver hair, the slower movements, and they forget the rest. But here's where your presence still holds quiet power. Because when you do speak, when you offer a story, a memory, a piece of hard-earned truth, the ones who listen, truly listen, are changed by it. Your voice may no longer dominate the room, but it carries a kind of weight that only time can give. So don't go silent. Don't fade by default. Share what's real when it feels right, because there is someone who needs to hear it. There's a quiet narrowing that begins to unfold, not just in the social circles or the number of people around you, but in the shape of your daily life. What once felt full of motion, errands, small adventures, and routine rituals slowly contracts, not all at once, but in steady little steps you don't even notice until one day. Your world feels smaller. Maybe you used to take a short drive every morning just to see the town wake up. Or maybe you always had lunch with a neighbor, visited the library, walked through the market just to chat with the familiar faces behind the counters. Now, some days pass and the farthest you go is the end of the driveway, or not even that. And it's not because you've given up. It's just that the energy to do those things doesn't come as easily, or the logistics have changed, or the people who once joined you aren't there anymore. It begins to feel like the outside world is drifting farther away, while your own living room becomes the whole universe. The chair you always sit in, the view from the window you've memorized, the familiar hum of the refrigerator, the old clock on the wall. Everything tightens into this loop of comfort and sometimes of quiet isolation. And yet, there's something beautifully human about grieving that shrinking space, because it means you love what came before. You're not bitter. You're simply mourning the wideness that used to define your days. You're honoring how it felt to be a part of things. But this isn't the end of connection. Sometimes, as the outer world gets smaller, the inner world becomes sharper. You start paying attention to different things. You notice the light changing in the room as afternoon fades. You linger a little longer over photos. You let conversations, when they do come, run deeper than they used to. A small phone call becomes the highlight of the day. A kind note from someone unexpected can lift you for hours. Even a simple smile from someone who truly sees you, not just your age, but you, feels like a gift. And while the old world may be fading, the neighbors who've moved, the places that have closed, the routines that aren't safe anymore, there's still space to make room for something new. It won't look the same. It won't move at the same speed, but it can still bring joy. It can still bring meaning. Sometimes, that new space comes through conversation, a grandchild asking questions about your life, a book that sparks something long forgotten, a message from an old friend who found your number again, even a digital connection, a class, a chat group, a faith service streamed into your home can become a doorway back to something bigger. And then, almost suddenly, you notice that your body has become a bit unpredictable. Not in any dramatic way at first, but in small shifts that catch you off guard. One morning you wake up and feel clear, light, steady. You move around the kitchen with ease. Your joints cooperate. You breathe freely. You feel, for a moment, like yourself again. But the next day, or maybe even later that same afternoon, something feels off. Your legs don't move the same way. Your fingers are clumsy. You feel tired for no reason, or your balance feels just a bit too uncertain. It's like your body rewrote the rules without telling you. And this change, more than anything else, shakes your confidence. It's not the pain that's hardest. It's the inconsistency, not knowing if today will be a good day or a hard one, if you'll feel like yourself or feel like a stranger inside your own skin. That kind of uncertainty makes you second-guess things you used to do without thought. Should I go outside for a walk today? Or is it safer to stay in? Should I carry this dish? Or ask for help? You're not helpless, but you're cautious. And while caution is wise, it can also be exhausting. But here's where your adaptability becomes your greatest strength. Because you've lived long enough to know how to adjust, you pace yourself, you rest more often, you listen to the signals your body gives, those quiet messages you used to ignore. And in doing so, you reclaim a kind of control. Even in the face of unpredictability, you learn to prepare, to keep the walker nearby, even if you don't always use it, to stretch a little longer in the morning, to hydrate, to snack when your appetite fades, to make that call to your doctor before something becomes urgent. These aren't signs of frailty. They're signs of wisdom, of someone who knows that the goal isn't to move like you're 60 again, it's to move safely, steadily, and with grace. And perhaps the hardest truth of all is this: there are no guarantees from day to day anymore, but that doesn't mean you aren't still powerful. In fact, your awareness, your ability to adapt, to pay attention, to forgive yourself when plans change, is the very thing keeping you strong. So even when the morning feels uncertain, you get up, you do what you can. You breathe through the fog and wait for it to clear. You hold on to the good moments. And when the hard ones come, you remind yourself that you've made it through worse, much worse. And that's the deeper truth behind every one of these hard realities. You've lived through them. Maybe you didn't see them coming. Maybe no one warned you. But you're still here, still showing up, still learning how to move through a world that keeps changing. You don't need to be fearless, just honest, just aware, just willing to keep going. And now, as we look back on each of these quiet changes that unfold after 80, there's something important that needs to be said, something that too often gets left out of conversations about aging. These realities, as hard as they may feel, are not signs that you're fading. They're not proof that you're broken or behind. They're simply the natural, human markings of time passing. They show that you've lived deeply, fully, with both laughter and loss. It's easy in this season of life to feel like the world is slipping past you, like you're standing still while everything around you speeds up and forgets to look back. But that's not the whole truth, because what you carry, your memories, your resilience, your quiet wisdom, is the very thing that gives shape and meaning to the generations behind you. You may not be at the center of every conversation anymore. You may not move as quickly or be invited out as often. But your presence still matters. Your story still matters. The way you speak, the way you listen, the way you reflect on what life has taught you, that holds weight. And whether or not the world pauses to say it, you are still needed, still seen, still valuable. This stage of life doesn't erase the ones that came before it. It gathers them. It turns them into lessons, reminders, and, if you let it, gifts you can share. Even in the quietest moments, your life is still speaking. And perhaps that's what makes these hard truths worth facing. Not to mourn what's changed, but to honor it, to say yes. It's hard when friends drift away, when the phone stays silent, when the steps are slower and the hands less steady, but it's also meaningful because you feel those losses only because you've lived a life full of presence, movement, and love. There's something powerful that happens when we stop pretending aging is only about decline and start acknowledging it as another chapter. Different, yes, but just as worthy. A chapter where presence can mean more than performance, where attention becomes a form of love, where a conversation, a memory, a single shared laugh can fill an entire day with light. So if you've noticed yourself going through these shifts, if you felt that shrinking circle or unpredictable fatigue, or that strange sense of becoming invisible, let me say this plainly: you are not alone. You're walking a path many others are quietly navigating, often without the words to describe it. But now that we've named it, now that we've looked at it with clear eyes and open hearts, you can begin to respond differently. with more grace, with less shame, with a bit more courage to say, this is what it's like for me now. And when someone younger asks how you're doing, maybe this time you'll tell them the truth, not the version that sounds fine, but the one that invites connection. Because when we speak honestly about aging, we give permission for others to meet us there, to slow down with us, to listen a little longer, to value what can't be found on a screen or in a hurry. Maybe you don't need the wide world anymore. Maybe you just need a few steady connections, a quiet routine that brings peace, a small moment that reminds you you're alive and still capable of feeling deeply. So today, take a breath and let it land. Let it remind you that you've come far, that you're still becoming, that even now, especially now, you are growing into a kind of beauty that doesn't rush, doesn't shout, doesn't fade, a beauty rooted in truth. And if something in this reflection resonated with you, if you saw yourself between these lines, know this: your life, exactly as it is today, is still full of meaning, not because of what you can do, but because of who you are. And that has never depended on time or age. Thank you for spending these moments together. If this helped you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear the same reminders. Sometimes the smallest gesture, a comment, a message, a shared link, becomes the thread that pulls someone else out of isolation and into understanding. Aging is not the end of the story. It's just a quieter, deeper part of it, and you are still writing it, one breath, one choice, one ordinary, meaningful day at a time.